Okay, guys, let's talk about mythological creatures. So, mythological creatures are something that all cultures throughout time have in common. Of course, they're always different through different cultures, but the fact that they have them is what we have in common. So, mythological creatures are usually made up of the parts of different creatures, all put together in weird new combinations. And they usually have a purpose, like they're either meant to, scare people or they will teach an important lesson. Um, it's really important not to confuse these creatures with cryptozoological creatures. In cryptozoology, it's stuff like, Bigfoot or Loch Ness Monster. So basically, creatures that people do think exist and have claimed to see. Right, so let's look at some examples. We'll start with the Greco-Roman ones, which we should know thanks to Percy Jackson. You'll recognize this head. So it's a woman's head with snakes for hair. This is Medusa. She was half woman and half serpent. And if you looked in her eyes, you would be turned to stone. Okay, now Medusa is a good example of one of those mythological creatures that didn't actually serve to teach a lesson. So depending on what version of the story you heard, she was either raped by Poseidon in Athena's temple or she seduced Poseidon in Athena's temple. But either way, Athena didn't like that, so she turned her into this horrible creature. So the lesson here is don't mess with the gods. Okay. Let's look at this guy. This is a griffin. So this is pretty familiar. Half lion, half eagle. Eagle is considered the king of the flying beasts. The lion is considered the king of land beasts. So if you put both of those together, you get the king of all beasts, right? And the griffin was actually a positive mythological creature, said to bring good luck. He was a guardian of treasure and priceless possessions. Okay, so we like griffins. Here's one that's kind of hilarious. It's famous thanks to Harry Potter, in particular Harry Potter 2. Can anyone guess what this might be? It starts with a B. In the movie, they showed it as a giant snake, but it was actually part rooster, part snake. This is a basilisk. Okay. So it could kill you with a single glance. And strangely enough, the weasel was its actually only known enemy. So a hydra. This is the seven-headed guardian of the underworld. Super, super deadly. It had not just many dangerous heads, but it spewed poison gas. And it was so deadly, in fact, that its tracks alone could kill you. Now, do you guys remember what would happen if you cut off one of the hydra's heads? Yeah, like 2 of them would grow back in its place. So not a good way to fight the hydra. Chimera. So this guy's pretty scary. Triple-headed creature. We have a dragon, a lion, and a goat. Generally not a good creature. Very terrifying, bad, scary creature. Strangely enough, the name chimera has now been used to name a very, very rare biological anomaly. It turns out that people, and they didn't believe this could happen until very, very recently. In fact, a really famous serial killer in Russia, Andrei Chikatilo, went free before the scientific community actually really acknowledged that this was a thing. But it turns out that some people can have more than one set of DNA. And the reason for that is that when they are still fetuses, they might be twins, like fraternal twins. And then one twin will actually just absorb the other. And that DNA ends up being part of the other twin as well. So it's pretty crazy. But yeah, it's a thing. Okay, let's look at some Native American legends. These are pretty interesting. Here we have the Skinwalker. I think you guys have probably heard of that. So in some Native American legends, a skinwalker is a person with the supernatural ability to turn into any animal he or she desires. So not just like a wolf, like, a werewolf. It could be anything. So to be able to transform the legend requires that the skinwalker actually wears the pelt of the animal, but it's not necessarily necessary. The thing about it, though, is that you would think it was kind of a cool, interesting, great thing, but it's not. It's considered a bad thing because in order to be able to get that power, the skinwalker has to have done something horrible. Um, Usually, the worst thing you can do, of course, is murder. So the deer woman. So this one's interesting. The deer woman is is kind of a weird legend. It's basically where she looks like a beautiful woman and she will go and seduce a man, and right before things get serious, she kills him. And the basic lesson that she teaches is to, I guess, not go with strange women. I don't know, but it's she will become that half deer, half woman right before she kills them. So that's a kind of a scary one. Then there's the Wendigo. Now this is probably the scariest one there is. This tends to be a legend along the western coast all the way up to Canada and Alaska, the native people from those areas, mostly because those places are really, really cold. And the Wendigo is kind of the embodiment of freezing, starvation, and cannibalism. So it's kind of like the last resort of people when they're freezing to death and they're starving. Let's see, I'm going to read you a description of the Wendigo. So the Wendigo was gaunt to the point of emaciation, its desiccated skin pulled tautly over its bones, with its bones pushing out against its skin, its complexion the ash gray of death, and its eyes pushed back deep into their sockets. The Wendigo looked like a gaunt skeleton recently disinterred from the grave. What lips it had were tattered and bloody, unclean and suffering from suppurations of the flesh. The Wendigo gave off a strange and eerie odor of decay and decomposition, of death and corruption. So, not a good guy. Interestingly enough, the Wendigo is known not just for appearing in their natural form, but also for being kind of a spirit that can possess humans and cause them to kill and cannibalize people. So yeah, not good. So there's ancient Mexican Quetzalcoatl. This was a feathered serpent. That's kind of interesting. In Egypt, we have the Sphinx, but the cool thing about sphinxes is that they actually appear beyond Egypt. They're also found in Southeast Asia. Now, always a good creature. The Sphinx, typically shown as a man here, and lion. Okay, but definitely benevolent, lots of protection. You'd find them on temples and things like that. Amit, this is a really cool one. So Amit was part lion, part hippopotamus, and part crocodile. So those are the three largest man-eating creatures along the Nile. So when they put them all together, they created Amit, and Amit had a very special purpose. It was called the devourer of souls. So when you died in ancient Egypt, your soul had to be judged. Okay, so you would see if you were worthy of going into the afterlife. So what they would do is they would put your heart on a scale, and on the other side they would put a feather. Now, if you lived a good life, you were a good person, your heart would be the same weight as the feather, or even lighter, and then you would be allowed to go into the underworld, or the next life. But if you were a bad person, your heart would be heavier than the feather, and what would happen is that Amit would swallow your soul. So that would be the end of you. So just a really quick kind of go through here. Philippines, we have the Diwata, which were pretty much nature spirits. If you were good to nature, they're good to you. If not, they'll get you. In China, of course, the dragon is very, very common imagery, very popular mythological creature, considered most powerful and divine creature, as well as controller of all waters. They were able to create clouds with their breath. So they symbolize great power, and they're very supportive of heroes and gods. They're very lucky. Okay, they're a good mythological creature, which is interesting because we have dragons in Western cultures too as a mythological creature, but it's very different, isn't it? The Western dragon, it's killed by knights, right? It is greedy and hoarding and vicious and brutal. So here's a representation of another mythological Chinese creature. This is a giant. It's actually got kind of a great story. This is Kua Fu. So he was a giant who wanted to capture the sun. So he would start chasing the sun, running after it, and would kind of keep going and going and going, always trying to catch the sun, but was never able to. He drank all the water from all the lakes as he went, and was never able to capture the sun and ended up dying because of it. So the lesson it teaches us is that even though you are a giant, and you still have to know your limitations. So even a giant can't capture that. So let's look at some other stuff from different cultures real quick. So we have some Japanese imagery, Korean and Japanese here. Indian, so we see the big cat with the little elephant snout. More Indian, so kind of a person with a bird cross. European stuff, so here's Pegasus. So we all know Pegasus. This is the phoenix. So the phoenix is a bird that it's like a firebird. It will burst into flames at the end of its life and then will be reborn from the ashes. So a great symbol for rebirth. Cyclops, one eye right in the middle there. Everybody knows the unicorn. The Minotaur, half bull, half human. And then we have some great little sea serpents, and of course the mermaid, half fish, half woman. All right, so your assignment. You are going to create your own mythological creature, and it has to be made of parts of existing animals. So I don't want you to make up your own thing, okay? Take parts from existing animals, put them together in a new way. The backgrounds need to show your creature's habitat. So you really kind of need to think it through. You have to know kind of like what it eats, where it lives, what it does, that kind of stuff, so that you can create the background to match. So your whole paper is going to be drawn. So yeah, fill entire page. But the focus here is texture. So I want to see value in texture everywhere, okay? And then you're going to create a one-page story about your creature. So you're going to just tell me about it, and I'll show you examples of that later. Okay. So here's some examples of some student work, and there will be more online too. So this person went with more of a plant kind of creature. Here we have a fish giraffe bird, a parrot bird. Here's a cool little otter fish, mer otter. A wolf bird. Wow, this is a lot of stuff. It's like a lobstery slug slash donkey, I guess. I don't know. Oh, this one has a great name. It's like the panduckin. Okay. So we have bird, panda, duck. Okay. So things you want to think about. Does it symbolize something? Does it mix with humans? Is it evil? Is it good? Think about using slugs or snails, underwater creatures, bugs. And then does it fly? Is it cursed? What does it eat? Is it intelligent? Does it teach us a lesson? Is it nocturnal? Where does it live? Okay, all those things you want to think about. All right, have fun.